You've just entered the law offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker. If you've come for actual legal advice, you need to turn right around, honey. You need to get out of here, 'cause you ain't gonna get none of that. They quibble, and they squabble, and they bicker. But if you want to hear meaningless opinions, this is the right place. They got plenty of that. Stuff that makes no sense at all. They go off on tangents. It's crazy talk. If that's your thing, keep listening. They'll keep talking.
Oh no no, oh no no, it's another episode of the Law Offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker. You've entered the Law Offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker. Yay!
Welcome to another episode of the Law Offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker on this June 2nd, 2021. We have a real special guest, for at least for me today, taking me back to my youth. His name is Jon Butcher. He is a multi-talented guitarist and vocalist and founder of the band Jon Butcher Axis, which was one of the first bands on MTV that highlighted a black musician. At the time, it was basically him and Michael Jackson that were running in the rotation on MTV. And he's going to help us out possibly later on in the episode, if he has time, with our newest client, White Rappers and Black Rockers. So I want to thank Jon Butcher very, very much for coming on to our show today. Just a quick question to get off the bat. You said that you, just before we started the show, that you have a new album coming out on June 15th. Could you tell us what the name of that is and what makes it different from the stuff that you did in the 80s?
Wow, two big questions.
Yes.
The name of the album is Special Day, and it's coming out as an independent release June 15th. It'll be available everywhere. And I think, if I understand your question correctly, what makes it different is almost everything. In the ensuing years, I learned how to sing. I also learned how to play guitar. And I learned how to write a song or two. So put all that together, and I think I've come a distance from 1983.
Is Devil's Train off that new album, or that's an old
release? Yeah, that's a video from the new album.
I like that. Very good stuff.
Thanks very much. I also made that video. I make all my videos. I have a company called Watercolors. And what we do is make mini movies for people, artists, musicians, painters, whoever needs to get their message out in a video world. I started that at the beginning of the pandemic, and it's worked out pretty well.
So you made all of your music videos personally?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that requires some training. I mean, I've just been trying to learn DaVinci Resolve myself recently, and my eyes cross often.
Yeah.
Did you just teach yourself how to direct, or you directed before in the past?
No, I started out, well, look, like everybody else who started out when I did in making records, I did the MTV videos that were $60,000 plus, right? Big budget, deep pocket, major label videos. Well, cut to 2021, no one can afford that. I can't afford that, to sink that kind of resources into a single video. If you release an album, you have to have multiple videos, maybe for every track. So I quickly deduced that the best thing for me to do would be to produce my own. And since I was interested in film, I went to school for film before I started my rock career. And I figured this was the best way to utilize that in a way that was useful.
So what was the budget on Devil's Train? How much did that cost you? Something like roughly.
My resources, I shoot all my own ancillary footage, and that I maybe have, I don't know, $2,000, $2,500 into it in terms of costs. Yeah,
it looks good.
Yeah,
You'd
nothing.
be surprised.
Now, when I hire myself out to do somebody else's, it's a bit more than that, but not by much. The whole idea is to.
I'm glad to hear it's more.
Well, the whole idea is to make this accessible for people who don't have big label, big budget, deep pockets. It's that simple. That's what Watercolors is.
Yeah, I actually really enjoyed the video for How Does It Feel? And personally, I think that's probably the best song you've got on your website that I was listening to.
That's also on the new record.
Yeah. I do have a question regarding the Devil's Train. I don't know if you noticed that part of the chorus from The Strokes seems to be as part of the chorus in that song.
Stroke me, stroke me.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Well, I'm not saying that it was deliberate.
No, I
There is a
mean,
part that does sound like it.
geez, I'll have to listen to it again.
Yeah,
I
listen
never
to the
even-
stroke and then listen to your song and then go, okay.
Are you
I mean, it's
talking
not like
about-
a major part of it, but
Oh, are you talking about lyrics or guitar move? Chord move.
Yeah, the riff.
I get it, the riff.
yeah.
I
mean,
never
it's-
thought of that, but I'll definitely give Billy a call and apologize.
It
Yeah.
wasn't like you were sampling or anything.
The
But
lyrics are definitely more profound than the stroke.
but I know I
No.
was listening to it and I started
I'm
going,
not. Hey, man, I'm not going to knock my pal. He was doing the best he could. In fact, he didn't do that bad, all things
No.
considered.
I think he did
Except for
pretty
that
well.
Pretty
one-
well.
Except for that one thing.
right, that one video.
Yes.
Which these days wouldn't have hurt him at all, but back
Well,
then it was just
I
a
don't know,
different
dude.
age.
It's the first time. I don't want. I don't want to dig in on him, but it's one of the few examples where one thing, one misstep, call it what you will, brought down the whole building.
Could you
It's
guys tell me
actually
what
a
you're
great
talking about?
song. It was just a horrible music video.
Could you tell me
Exactly,
what you're
yeah.
talking about, guys? I don't know this video misstep he did.
You don't know the thing that destroyed Billy Squier's career?
No, I don't
No.
know.
Enlighten me.
Oh, I'll have to track it down. But in the
Yeah.
meantime,
What was the name of that song?
wasn't it "Rock Me Tonight"?
Yes, that's exactly
I'm
what
pretty
it
sure
was.
I know
it
the
was that
song.
music video.
Guys, when you get a chance, look it
Yeah,
up. You'll
it was
understand right
definitely.
away.
I just pulled it up. It's definitely "Rock Me Tonight" from Billy
Yeah,
Squier.
we'll do that. on our own
Basically, he
time.
went from being kind of like a rock god type to hard to say exactly what he was deciding to do in that video.
You know what? A lot of times, and I can attest to this. When I was doing my share of MTV videos, the label would hire a director, right? So the
Yeah.
director, who has nothing to do with your band, was responsible for creating a concept and blah 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 blah, and delivering a project to the label. Now, oftentimes, the artist has little or nothing to say about it, right? Almost nothing. Maybe you can object after the fact, but that won't help your relations at the label. So most musicians that I knew kind of went along with the idea. I
So you
did a
think he was
video-
okay with rolling around on a bed in a pink tank top?
I'll bet you $1 that some director convinced him that would be cool. I'm telling you.
I'm sure you
I
get that
doubt
dollar.
seriously he thought of it, because then, again, record labels hired these directors to do this stuff, and they paid them big money. So you're
Right.
going to follow the program if you're going to be on a major label, and he was.
John, in your career, have you ever made a misstep that you look back on and said, that's where I fell off the rails?
Back in '85, I did a video for a song on my record called Holy War.
I just watched that one. I liked
All
it.
right. Well,
Yeah.
then you'll remember what I'm about to tell you.
Okay.
In the video, there are banners of what were those two television evangelists' names?
Didn't it have like the Ayatollah on there too, though?
Yeah,
Jerry
I-
Falwell?
Yes.
They had
Jerry
Falwell and what, like Jim Baker
So
or
there's
something?
there's a giant banner of Jerry Falwell behind me. There's a giant banner of the Ayatollah Khomeini behind me. The idea of the whole song was "Holy War is no good," right?
Yeah.
Well, that was lost on a lot of people who saw it, and it was the only video I ever did that got me in trouble when I was on tour. I got off a tour bus in Louisiana one
Mm.
day, and there was all this protest and cop cars everywhere. And I said to my bass player, what's going on? It's about you. I just heard it on the radio, and sure enough, Holy War got my ass in trouble, or it made my career, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah. Well, screw those people. I like that idea. That's a
Yeah,
good
it worked
concept.
out.
So
Yeah.
for a long time, you were kind of when you came along. I mean, what started you off was being with touring with the Jay Giles band, and that like is what opened.
Huge, big
op-
break, huge,
Right.
yeah.
And then later on, you wound up after your first album came out, you get to tour with like Rush and Scorpions and Def
Yeah.
Leppard.
All the metal
And-
bands. Yeah.
And I'm wondering, what exactly was that experience like coming out of the gate? I mean, I had seen an interview with you where you said it was just bizarre because you couldn't even get a record deal until you went on tour with Jay Giles, but then suddenly you're with these high-profile bands that are like international.
Yeah,
and there
two
you
things.
are.
The
Mhm.
tours themselves, the Giles tour was amazing because it gave us instant credibility to record labels who had been kind of sniffing us around for a couple of years. So all of a sudden we did 72 dates with the Giles band around the country and to sold out arenas, right? So, and we were the opening act and we killed it. And that's how we got our first record deal. And so from there, doing tours with Def Leppard was a gas, but I started to realize that I was kind of getting typecast as a metal band, which I never was. The records that I made were never like quote unquote metal. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but they were just more than that. So by the time we went out with the Scorpions, I was not feeling it too much, really. I was feeling
because that was like the
why am
heyday of the hair bands.
Dude,
right?
I said to our agent, listen, put me on opening up for the Police or put me on opening up for any number of acts with kind of a wider swath than just metal.
Yeah.
And you know, again, that's no knockdown of the music or genre. It's just that I felt like Axis had more to give than that. That was the only complaint I have. Other than that, we made thousands of fans.
Well, with the name like Axis, which I'm assuming is associated with Axis Bold as Love from Jimi Hendrix, that makes you sound kind of metal, you know, with a name like that.
I don't know, maybe, you know, I didn't think the records sounded metal. I think they sounded like hard rock. And I think there was, even on the first couple of records, there were a couple of acoustic-centric songs that weren't ballads, just acoustic guitar instead of electric. So it was a matter of perception.
Yeah.
And if I had it all to do over again, I wouldn't change anything except maybe the touring that came after the Giles band tour.
You're talking about the touring with Def Leppard and
Scorpions and
too metalish.
A few others, yeah.
But was it Jay Giles' decision to have you open for them? Did they know you guys personally?
Dude, it sure was. Me and my bass player were in our apartment in North Cambridge, freezing because we couldn't afford to have heat that month. It was in December, starving, no food, no heat, and the phone rings. And who is it but the tour manager from the Giles band, who we'd never met before. He said, I heard about you guys. You know, we were playing locally and beginning to get a following, but I wasn't making any money. And he asked if we were free to do 3 days at the Boston Garden around New Year's Eve. I didn't have to check my calendar. You know what I'm saying? I knew I was available. Yeah, so we said, of course. And doing those 3 dates, 3 dates consecutively at this 12,000 seat venue, kicked off our career in a big way because we were good. We were a good live band, good trio that had a lot more to offer than people expected. It was a lot more a lot more rhythmic, and a lot more had to do with. I mentioned the Police again, and Stuart Copeland as a drummer than it had to do necessarily with just metal music. So we were the perfect opener for Giles. I mean,
did you buy some ramen?
Huh?
Did you buy some ramen after that first show?
Ramen?
Yeah, we could afford ramen right after. Actually, when we got back, we did those 3 dates. And when we got back we did 3 dates there and then another 2 dates in Providence and somewhere else. And by that time, it looked like, geez, maybe this band is something good might happen. Sure enough, they invited us to do 72 dates after that.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was that was what kicked it off.
So who was it from Giles' band who was into you? Was it like Peter Wolf or was it actual Giles himself?
Peter Wolf and Seth.
Okay. And
yeah, the guys who are in charge. Right.
They're like, we want them. That's great.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
And so your history, from what I understand, is you were born in like Philly or inside in that area. Then you moved to Alaska at a young age.
Where I grew up, yeah.
And you grew up until like your final year of high school in the sticks, essentially.
Pretty much, yeah.
Right. And so what's that kind of like being out? I mean, you moved from such an urban environment to Nowheresville.
When I was in that urban environment, I was a little boy and didn't know from anything. So I grew up I went to a school called Brown's Trailer Park School. And it was a school.
That's a great name for a school, I got to tell you.
One single room with 3 grades in it and 4 people in each grade. And we were all in the same room. This is a small school in a small village in an out of the way place in Alaska, right? No, man. So looking back on it now, I'm glad for that. I'm glad I didn't grow up in on the mean streets, I'm not sure I would have been the same guy.
Yeah.
As it was, I came back to the East Coast for my last year of high school and had to make the big social adjustment, you know, and sort of encounter some bigotry and some weird looks and a lot of other stuff I wasn't used to, having grown up where I did.
Well, you probably moved there coming out looking like a bit of a hick, I would think. Going, I mean, the reason I say this is that I went to high school overseas in the Philippines, and I came
Right.
back to Baltimore. So it was not quite the same, but a similar thing where, and I was kind of accused of being a bit of a hick because I didn't necessarily have the worldliness of the guys who were raised in that city environment.
Right.
You
I
know?
didn't have that, but I had an ace in the hole.
Yeah.
I played guitar.
Right.
So that everybody in high school who had a band found out that I played guitar and I had one and I could play it. And so that got me over from a social stance. Otherwise, who knows?
Yeah.
What
I mean,
years
for
was
me,
this about?
Huh?
Was this the early 80s, late 70s? What years?
Yeah,
are we
that would
talking?
have been 1974.
Oh, wow. So what kind of music were you into then? Like who was your guitar heroes?
yeah, I think that it was Gene Autry was his guitar hero, Greg.
Well, you were as a
Oh,
little
could
boy,
be.
yeah. Yeah, all the singing cowboys. Because where I lived, we got all these old westerns like years after the fact. And so I'm watching Gene Autry when most kids were watching Batman. And
Hop,
that's
and Hop
what-
Along Cassidy. And
Yeah, exactly. So I got interested in playing guitar because of that. But when I had moved, by the time I was living back on the East Coast and going to high school, man, I was, you know, Jimmy and electric guitar and Stratocaster and Please Give Me More.
So why do you think that your career didn't quite gel at the same level as Michael Jackson per se? Is it because you got too closely associated with the metal bands, perhaps, or
No, I
or
don't
is
think
just you
so.
weren't that comfortable with what you were doing, or
Look, I'll tell you something. When I listened to my first two records, and I have to be careful when I say this because those records are important to some people. But when I listen to them, all I can hear is a guy who didn't know what he was doing. And we were kind of constricted by a producer, the late Pat Moran, who produced Robert Plant's solo records.
okay,
We went to England to do my first two records. And this guy had a kind of an idea in his head. He'd never seen us live. So he had an idea in his head of what it would be. And dude, if I had been able to go in and just set up the band and play like we normally did, those first two records would have been a lot different. And I think my career arc would have been different. But I put it to those first two records, which made an impression. You know, the Life Takes a Life and that video and everything was great. We got great acceptance at MTV, but it didn't capture why we got the Giles tour. It didn't.
Right.
Those two records don't explain
Hmm.
why we were hired to open up for one of the most popular bands in the world. It's because we were a great live act, and that is not reflected in those first two records. More is the pity. So
And-
I've moved on from there, but I think that's the explanation.
When did you finally have that epiphany where you went?
When I was
Okay.
able to start producing myself, I did
Okay.
the Wishes record. I was living in California, and I did the Wishes album, which was my biggest record so far in terms of sales. And I had a producer there too by the name of Spencer Proffer. But I said to him when we first met, look, you have to let me do this myself. If you want to take credit on the records and put your name on it, I'm fine. I understand how that game works. But you have to let me do that. And that record, the Wishes album, sounds like me. And it was, you know, it was the first time I was kind of feeling being allowed to self-produce, which was really important. I wish I'd been able to do that from the very beginning.
Makes
Yeah,
sense.
that would have totally given you a different arc. Now, I do want to pivot a little bit
Yeah.
because we're running a little short on time,
Sure.
which is your work in cowboy reenactments and how that led you to doing music for the show Deadwood and actually being on the show Deadwood.
Okay.
Because Deadwood's like one of my favorite shows of all time. And I heard an interview where he said, if you blink, you missed it. And I think I blinked because
I'll tell you the story really quickly. After Axis finished touring, I was burned out. The band was burned out. We were burned out on being on the road and not meeting big commercial success. It was a grind. So I decided to move to California, just almost on a whim. I want to try a different scene and see what I can do. And when I moved out west, that's when I met Spencer. That's when I got my record deal with Capitol. And when I was recording one day, there were these guys that were doing a TV commercial in front of the Capitol building for Heinz ketchup. Only they were all dressed up in Western garb, right? I mean, the horses and the cowboy boots and chaps and all that stuff. So I'm talking to the guys in front of the building before I had to go, before I was going to work. And lo and behold, they said, well, listen, John, do you know how to ride? I said, do you mean horses? Sure, I do. Well,
just the ones in front of the supermarket.
I didn't know how to ride, but I said I did.
Oh, you didn't? Oh, I figured that was your Alaska upbringing coming back or something, but no, all right.
No, man.
No, he rode polar bears.
Yeah, I never rode a horse, but I told them I did, and they said, you're hired. Literally, I fell in with these guys because of that chance encounter, and I did they were a cowboy reenactment group that did TV commercials, like where you see a bar fight or something like that, and then they sell a product at the end. It could be ketchup, it could be anything, New York City, that stuff, right?
I was thinking about that, the salsa coming.
Exactly, that's what
an interesting group to fall into by accident.
I know, but I was having fun.
Yeah.
I was living in California for the first time in my life and meeting all kinds of people. And I met Jeff Beck in the first couple of years that I was there and did a video with him. And it was an exciting time. And I enjoyed the cowboy stuff. I thought it was a gas. It was fun. It makes for some great pictures too.
So do you still carry any chaps around with you? Like, like some guys wear garter belts. You like wear chaps and the spurs?
Yeah. No.
It's very sad. That's too bad.
No.
Trying to find dirt on them.
You could do a whole cowboy themed album.
I'm sure there's dirt somewhere, but it isn't in chaps. I'll tell you that.
It's not in chaps.
Yeah.
That's good.
Well, I want to touch briefly on our client for today, which is because you're kind of a guest attorney. None of us are really attorneys. This is a fake thing. But the client for today is white rappers and black rockers. Now, that seems like overly obvious, but I find it kind of fascinating in terms of heading with the black rocker aspect of it, is that in terms of in hard rock, there weren't a lot of guys like you. Prior to you, there was maybe Phil Lynott from Thin Lizzy,
the first guy I would have
and then kind of like after you is pretty much Lenny Kravitz. Yeah. Currently, there's Gary Clark Jr., who I'm really enjoying. That guy,
and he's doing well, by the way.
He is, but conversely, in the rap department, there's basically the white guys. There's like who've done well. There'd be Eminem and like the Beastie Boys.
Yeah.
I guess Post Malone kind of falls into that. And I wonder if you have a take on, what is it why the cultures haven't crossed more, that there's people who are more involved in that. And, Brendan, Greg, feel free to give your comments too.
When I started making videos for MTV, there was a partition. It was an unspoken partition that black musicians or artists wouldn't be readily accepted by a white consumer. To me, that sounds crazy. I've proven it wrong a dozen times at least, but that was the partition, and that was it wasn't anything that it was codified into rules, but it was hell for me to kind of make my way onto the MTV playlist. Right, I had to scratch and show numbers and go on big tours to do it. So I guess there's a hesitancy with some programmers, maybe of radio or of certain stations, of certain places to consume music. There's a perception that you can't mix the two, and I think it's been proven absurd by now. I can think of many acts that combine both rap and hard rock into one package. There are examples of it. But I think at the time that I was coming on the scene, that partition was there.
I find it so strange, though, on the one half of the equation, black rockers, because black people invented rock and roll. That's what's weird. It's almost like they invented it.
Yeah, ask Little
Exactly.
Richard.
Chuck Berry, all those guys, they invented rock
Exactly.
and roll from old 50s rhythm and blues, turned into rock and roll. And then it's almost like black people said, we don't want to do this anymore. We'll leave it to the white people. They can do it.
Well,
But
I
we're
don't know.
done.
Then
mean-
leave it to the white people. What is this idea, Greg?
It almost seems like black people abandoned rock and roll. Like that's
I
why so
think-
many rockers are white.
Yeah, I think that where rock and roll kind of diverges, and I'll defer to our guest counsel, the music that African Americans did became blues, and there's still, a lot of white people doing blues music, but that's still kind of quote unquote rock and roll. I think what we're talking about is what white people did and made it Scorpions and Def Leppard. Well, they're whatever, you know what I mean? It's like it became heavy metal, and suddenly it became something completely different. And there's just not, In Living Color maybe was that.
What did you think of them? What did you think of them?
I liked them. I did.
I didn't buy their album, but I liked their song that was on MTV.
Cult of Personality. Yeah.
Right.
Cult of Personality was a great
song. But for me,
song.
I didn't buy the album because lyrically, that song, part of it was just too repetitive for me. And so I'm like, that wasn't really my thing. I was into the heavy metal scene at the time. I was like into Sabbath and Dio and Iron Maiden and Cult.
And you worked at MTV at the time, so you had this thing in your brain about black rockers.
What?
I'm just being silly.
That sounded like
I'm
a
like, I
charge.
worked at MTV.
That sounded like somebody making a charge right there.
Right. I'm drawing a blank. Greg.
Like,
help me
Greg, I
out.
was in high school at that time. I was not working at MTV.
The youngest executive at MTV.
Are you calling me a racist? What the hell?
one of the greatest
Jacques Hughes.
That's right. One of the greatest punk bands of all time, Greg, was African American, and I'm drawing a blank. They were from
Bad
DC.
Oh, Bad
Brains.
Brains. Yes.
Bad Brains is like one of the best rock bands of all time. Easily.
Well, we just found out
Minor
yesterday
Threat.
that Suicidal Tendencies had a couple of African American members as well, as a major punk band
I don't
too.
think that that's been true. Though the partition I was explaining may have been true for me in those days, I don't think it's true anymore. Particularly given the fact that music is so fragmented.
Yeah.
You can go anywhere online to get anything you're looking for, anything.
Yeah.
And people consume music not by albums, very rarely. They consume songs. Right. So that kind of breaks down whatever dynamic that there was that kept me from being a regular on MTV at the time. Whatever that was is dissipated, because MTV is no longer the force it was to begin with.
Right.
The entire business is fragmented.
Yeah,
Well, there's less
MTV now is
gatekeepers.
reality shows. Is what
There's less
MTV is.
gatekeepers now. Like
Absolutely.
in the old days, there was like the big corporations that we don't like your face. Nobody's ever going to hear you. You'll
Yeah.
never get heard. And
These days, kids' musical tastes are just so diverse and eclectic.
Totally, dude.
It's like one of my kids, he's in his 20s. He knows more about Blue Oyster Cult than I ever knew. He's like
How about
delved
that?
into every single album of theirs. He's like,
I
tell me
think-
about
but-
their new stuff. And I'm like, they have new stuff? I'm like, I don't even know anything about
I
that.
think that's beautiful, though. That makes my
Yeah.
point. The kids now who consume music will groove on what they like. If they dig it, they'll groove on it and they'll follow you. And I know that because it's happening to me. It's happening to me right now. The generational interest, it has knocked me. Almost fell down looking at some of the correspondence that I get through social media. So I think those old lines are erased and no longer relevant, and the decisions are no longer in the hands of a few guys, corporate executives. They're just not.
I think some of them are still trying to hold on to that, but it's just working against them these days.
I'm not sure it's a business model that's going to stay around.
That's right. Yeah, that whole model is just changed. I wish we had more time to talk with you, because there's definitely a lot of things I want to pick
Well,
your brain
heck,
about.
let's just do it again sometime. I'm having a
That's
good
certainly
time.
that would be fantastic.
Why
could
don't
go
we
in
just do
further.
that? Let's make another time to talk. Like I mentioned at the beginning, guys, my record is available. A release isn't like what it used to be, where there was a record store you could go to and pick up the vinyl. What it is really is making it available to people who want to purchase online and making enough noise so that there's some awareness. So from June 15th for the rest of the summer, I'll be doing a lot of talking about it. And I would love to come and talk to you guys again if you'll have me.
Sure,
Totally.
absolutely.
Sure.
I mean, I don't know how the other two feel about you, but I am okay.
I would love it.
Cool,
Great.
man. Well, thank you for having me on. I really had a good time with you. I really did.
Well,
Thanks,
it's like
thanks.
let's promote your album's coming out again on June 15th. You can
It's called
find it.
Special Day. Yeah,
Special Day.
Day.
It'll be on Amazon Music and iTunes, and it'll be on your
everything.
website.
Everything.
And people can
everything.
find you at jonbutcher.com. That's JON Butcher.com.
Yep.
And if you follow the axis, you will find him.
Yes, you will.
Not the axle, but the axis.
No, please don't follow the axle.
No.
But we'll continue talking about our client today, unfortunately without any more help from John, because he's got to go run because he's getting famous again. So he's got lots of other interviews to do. But thank you again, John.
Thanks, guys.
And we'll definitely book this,
Thank you.
this again.
All right. I hope to talk to you again soon.
Absolutely.
Okay,
It's gonna
thank you.
happen.
Bye.
Take care, guys.
See
Bye-bye.
ya.
Bye-bye. And so thus it becomes us. Well, I believe this is the first time we've only had a guest for a half an hour. Normally we can
It is.
yank it out of them, but that's why they ask these questions. So white rappers, guys, how many of you know who Paul Wall is? Of you, all of the thousands of you that I'm talking to.
Don't know.
Don't know.
Okay, so he's like a really big name rapper who's a white fella, and
Fella?
fella. I say fella. It's a good ubiquitous term. It's one that can be approved or disapproved by anyone, and it'll.
Does he identify as a fella? Do you know?
I
What
think
about-
a white fella actually.
But anyway, what about Paul Wall?
Well, I'm just saying he is another white rapper in terms of defining. I think the difference between white rappers and black rockers is because rock has its roots in African American or African culture, African descent culture, I suppose would be more accurate. Whereas rap has nothing to do with white people initially, other than the language that's being used being English, coming from Caucasians. And that's the extent, I think, of the connection white people have to rap culture. And I think I'm just curious, like, where it falls along. Now, you knew the Beastie Boys when they were still a punk band, right, Brendan?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, sure. Yeah.
What was-
By
I
the
think-
albums.
Were they called like, I think they were called like the Young Aborigines or something like that was what their original name was?
I never heard this.
I don't
No.
think so. I think they were the Beastie Boys the whole time.
Yeah, I came across something today which said that they had a name.
They may have had an earlier band, but when they sort of made the scene in New York as a punk hardcore band, they were the Beastie Boys. They even had a song they did where they explained what Beastie was, because that's some kind of dipshit acronym that I don't remember what it stands for.
Beastie is an acronym.
Mhm.
Like
It's
the
an
whole
acronym.
word is an acronym?
Yeah, like be everything awesome in so many times. I don't know, something. I forget. I'm sure you
Valiant
could-
effort.
I'm sure you could Google it. Yeah, it was like, there was a lot of punk acronym bands, and they took the crown for the longest acronym that they made into a word that
And
Wow,
their
I'll
first
have to
thing-
track that down. That'd be
Their
weird.
first single for Cookie Puss was actually a novelty rap song. I mean, it's a total novelty song. There's someone talking to someone over the phone, like a prank call.
yeah,
And it's just
Cookie,
got a
Cookie
little
Puss
beat
was
to it.
right. Cookie Puss was really their first foray into rap, but prior to that, like Pollywog Stew and stuff like that sounded like they even did. I think when they were on Saturday Night Live, they did one of their old punk songs, which was kind of interesting.
Well,
Yeah,
what
when
I
I saw
see here
them-
is that they formed as a four-piece punk band, the Young Aborigines, in 1981 by Diamond, John Barry, Yacht, and Kate Schellenbach. And then they appeared on a compilation cassette, New York Thrash, before they recorded their first EP, which was Pollywog Stew in 1982. So I guess they shifted out of the Aboriginal content. They weren't
Yeah.
singing about kangaroos anymore when they wanted to rap.
And
And
boomerangs.
and by the way, in '82, those guys were probably 14 years old, maybe 13. They're not much older than me. I mean, maybe a year, one way or the other.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
sounds
they're-
about right. I mean, I think they were about the same age as me, and I was 15 or 16
Right.
in 82,
Yeah.
something like that. So were you in the punk scene in New York back in the 80s? I thought you were more in Seattle.
They were
Northwest.
national. Everyone knew who they were.
Me?
Yeah.
No, I wasn't. No, but of course you knew the New York punk scene. That was the thing about punk. We're getting into punk music now. Punk music had regional areas. Like the New York punk scene was it had its own vibe, just like the Seattle punk scene had its own vibe, and LA had its own vibe. Everybody kind of had their own like whatever.
Don't forget Boston.
Boston. Yeah. I mean, everybody kind of had their own thing. So, you know, a New York punk band would come to Seattle and be like, oh, you know, and so it was just, so you just knew, I mean, that was where you got into zines and, you know, everybody making their own little stupid magazines about the local thing. And then they'd interview people, and it was very tribal punk rock music back in the 80s.
It makes you wonder how the Beastie Boys went into rap then from that. Is it, I guess maybe it's an easy transition from punk into rap, maybe. Because punk isn't like all about melodies per se, you know, not heavy melodies. It's a little more rough.
You don't have to play well on your instruments. You don't have to be that virtuosic.
Well, yeah, I think back in the day, the rap was mainly being used on turntables.
But the band that started hardcore basically was the Bad Brains that he mentioned earlier, and Minor Threat.
I don't think he mentioned. I think you mentioned Bad Brains,
no,
Greg.
He mentioned them, and I concurred.
Couldn't remember the name.
But Bad Brains were Minor Threat got all their chops from them. They saw them doing that super fast jackhammer beats, and they said that sounds great. But here's an interesting story about Bad Brains, which I love. They loved reggae music too, like really slow dub reggae. It wasn't a fusion of punk and reggae, it was reggae. And they would love to get booked at a reggae club, and they'd do their total hardcore set for them. And then they get booked at a punk club and just do an hour of like, dun, 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 Ja, I love Ja. They just love to piss people off.
Wait,
they actually do have a song.
Could you sing that again, Greg?
I'm not exaggerating. They have a song called I Love Ja.
I know, but I want you to do that little...
I love Ja.
Sounds like you're a dentist.
But they would do that all the time and piss off
I love
everyone.
Jaw.
But I love the fact they did that. That's so funny.
Another sequel, I love maxillofacial surgery.
I love molars. But I still think, though, it is strange that Black people invented rock and roll, and yet there's such a paucity in the history of rock and roll. I know there's
but see, that what doesn't make sense is they invented rap too, but they haven't given that up.
I know.
So is it actually? I mean, you make it sound like all Black people got together, like, and they made a decision.
I don't think that's how it works.
We're gonna give rock to the white folks.
You know what I think? What happened is Black people moved on to something else. They invented another great form. They started doing soul and funk, and they said, "Okay, we're done with that rock and roll. We invented it.
So
we got."
When you say, I don't know. When you say that rock and roll was invented by Black people, give me a solid example of how it was like just Black people that created rock and roll.
Well, all that early proto rock and roll, like the jump rhythm and blues from like 50 to 55, which I have all these comps of all that stuff. You know, like Rocket 88 by Jackie Brenston. I don't know if you know that old.
Wasn't Ike Turner part of that too?
Yep. And this is like 54 before anyone had ever used the term.
Yeah, that's kind of considered like the first rock record is Rocket 88. Yeah.
Now looking back. But when that came out, nobody said, "Whoa, this is this new sound. We're going to call it rock and roll."
I thought Michael J. Fox did in Back to the Future. No, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
Chuck Berry.
Ripping off Chuck
Wasn't
Berry.
he there?
A white guy ripping off a Black artist, once again, taking the credit. But, and so, you know, basically all those guys were Black. I don't think there's one white guy. You know, that was called race music. And then, of course, obviously, there's some influence in rock and roll, like the rockabilly stuff. That's obviously from country swing, white people music. But for the most part, a lot of the early guys were Black guys who like basically made the rules for rock and roll, maybe, or laid the groundwork. And then within 10 years, who did you have in rock and roll who was Black? Hendrix wasn't even around yet.
Right.
They had moved on to like stuff like Sam Cooke, Otis Redding. I mean, soul, Motown, I guess, which you know, that's part of the rock and roll umbrella, but it's pop mostly.
Right.
So it's just odd to me. I always find it strange.
Yeah, well.
Especially
I find it strange that still you say it's like a committee that came to this conclusion.
I never said that.
They cannot be part of rock anymore.
I said
they all got together and said, "We're done. No one give rock to the white people, and we're not going to do it anymore."
There was a conference.
Like this conclusion.
There's a conference.
Came to.
Well, I mean, declare we shall never play rock and roll again.
A lot of sports were created by white people that you know are not really white people sports anymore. So you know, there's give and take in the whole racial.
What are white people sports? You talking about like hockey?
Basketball was invented by white people.
Okay.
Football
was invented by white people.
Baseball was. You talking about American football?
Yeah, I'm talking about football, asshole, not soccer.
Soccer was invented
Well,
by white
in the
people.
rest of the
country do you-
world,
What country do you live in? Portland, the outside of Portland is Europe now? Like,
I used to be a member of a country that belonged to the International Football Association, which they considered, what we call
What-
soccer here in the United States.
what country was that?
That was in the Philippines.
Oh, the Philippines, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Huge world power.
So did they call baseball hockey there?
They call
Yes, they
baseball
did.
stick.
Stick. Let's play some stick,
You
everyone.
want to play stick? No, we're not playing stick. That's a terrible Filipino accent.
That is not a Filipino accent.
No,
I don't know what that accent was.
That was
I
like
don't-
Irish Jamaican.
kind of was an Irish Jamaican, I think. I think I was riffing off the earlier.
There's got to be a
Rastafarian
lot of
thing.
Irish Jamaicans around, though. I think that's
I
definitely
love
it.
ya. Top of the morning, Patty.
It's like when Irish people actually moved to Jamaica, they and then they created a whole branch of I don't know, people.
They
I
get
don't know what
a
I'm talking
branch
about
of
anymore.
people. I don't
I've
know.
lost my mind for a second. I started
they-
thinking about how people with my last name emigrated to Argentina and created a colony there, and I was like, I got stuck in that thought while I was thinking of the Irish people moving to Jamaica,
You
and
know
they
what I
got
found?
confused in my head.
What I found out recently is that a lot of Scottish and Irish people immigrated to India. Like, there's a lot of Indians that had Scottish surnames and Irish last names, but are full on Indian. But they are not. Their last name is like McGillicuddy.
How
So
would
they make-
you pronounce words with both an Indian and a Scottish accent?
I don't know. I worked with a guy briefly who literally looked like Bollywood, but sounded like Sean Connery.
Wow.
I know I've tried in
they-
the past to do like Irish or Scottish accents, but I always wind up sounding Indian at some point as I try
Would
to
they
keep
make?
they
Would they
never
make
stick.
would they make tandoori haggis in that part of India?
That might be good, actually.
I don't know. He was just real excited. I remember when I first talked to him, he goes, Brendan Haggerty. And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, oh, there's a lot of Irish people in my part of India. And I'm like, is this Sean Connery? Who is this? And then he puts himself on Zoom and I'm like, oh my God, you do not look like your voice at all. And he goes, I know.
It's an Indian with red hair.
Yeah, he was, but I guess his grandfather was 100% Scottish.
That it would piss off so many KKK members knowing the story.
Yeah, that's
Like
why they're over in India.
miscegenation
Yeah, so
across
anyway.
the planet. Wasn't there an Ursula K. Le Guin novel which talked about eventually we'll all become gray because of the mixing of all of the races? Like
Isn't that
eventually
the
there will
mud
only be
people
one
theory?
color and that'll be gray because we mixed them all together.
That's the mud people theory that racist, how we're all going to be mud people. It's like, no,
Mud
we'll just have nice complexions. We'll have nice,
We'll all just be
tan
tan.
looking.
We'll just be tan, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, which is what many people aspire to anyway, is just being tan.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah,
why
I
they
don't-
spray orange stuff on themselves all the time.
Yeah.
Greg, have you ever thought about doing that, like getting into a tanning booth and just getting sprayed all over?
Oh, I thought you meant miscegenation. I've thought about that a
What
lot.
was that?
But no, I've never cared about a tan because I don't care what I look like, obviously. So it's
You
too
care a
much
little
trouble.
bit.
Yeah, I guess I don't take my clothes off in public.
I think you need to shave your facial hair where you just take the gray out and leave everything that's still brown, and I think you'll have a very interesting pattern
That's not much.
left on your face.
Yeah.
Well,
it
no,
would
I
be
think
very
I think it
weird.
would be an unusual one where nobody else would have it. I think it would put you at the cutting edge of facial hair in the area.
It would be geographic face. That's what they call it.
Geographic face? Why would they call
Like
it
geographic tongue. You know when you got all those bumps in your tongues.
that? What?
You never heard of
No.
geographic tongue?
No.
Geographic tongue?
You're lucky.
No.
It's not a pleasant thing to have.
Geographic tongue? It's like
It's
your
a thing.
tongue is the shape of Greenland or something? What
South
are you-
America.
What are you talking about? What is geographic tongue?
Yeah.
Look, I'm Argentina. No, I
Okay.
don't know what geographic tongue is. Something where you've got like bumps in
You
your
don't know what it
tongue,
is.
so-
You just made it up then.
I don't know what causes it. I'm not a doctor, but it basically leaves bumps in your tongue, so it looks like a map. So that's why they call it the geographic tongue.
When you
'Cause
say
got all these
they
random-
call, who are the they that's calling it that?
the medical community,
The medical,
doctor.
that's the actual Latin term is geographic tongue.
Yeah, and they're the
Wow.
same ones. They're the same community that told black people they couldn't do rock and roll anymore. The medical community. From this point forward, you shall not be able to play the music.
You can't not play rock and roll, and you must have geographic tongue. But
I
you're
don't want
saying you're gonna have
geographic
geographic. See, I thought you were talking about how your beard would be like in the shape of a country of some kind.
Yeah, it
That's
would
what
be.
you
It
mean.
would be lots of. It would be a whole map because there'd be a little clump here, then there'd be.
So you basically have an
continent.
archipelago face, is what
Yeah,
you're
there'd be a
saying.
continent over here and an island. And
Your
isthmus.
face would just be Indonesia, is what it would be.
I was gonna say
Yeah.
like the South China Sea, just
Right. Your face would be
Micronesia.
Polynesian, even though you're American.
Yes.
You'd be like part Polynesian, part American. I think we got off track though. From
Yeah.
oh,
Our client.
geographic tongue is off track from black rockers and white rappers. You know,
Who's
we
like
didn't
the-
get to mention in terms of black rappers is Ice Cube's
Body count.
body
Well,
counts.
I was
You're
going to
doing
mention
black
I was thinking of that.
rockers, not black rappers.
Yeah, whatever.
Block
Oh, black
rappers.
rapper.
Block roppers. That's what we're talking about now.
Block rockin' beats. That's what we're going to talk about.
Block rock and beats.
Hit it, DJ Matt.
Eventually, we just be talking about Tetris or Legos at some point. If we keep talking about blocks. So, what about Ice Cube's what? Or was it Ice
Ice-T.
Cube or Ice T?
Ice
When
T.
he was on the
counts.
first Lollapalooza tour, and he said, "Hey, I like Rollins band, and I like this heavy sound. I never grew up listening to metal." And he started his own metal kind of. Well, I don't know what were they metal, like this weird kind of hard.
They were
metal-y
like-
band.
It was like heavy metal with rap.
Like thrash almost,
Yeah, like thrash metal, and then he rapped kinda.
but he also kind of just also sang like a punk rocker or metal
Nope.
guy. Some
Not
of them,
really.
I thought.
Some of them a little bit, but mostly it was.
Okay.
I remember driving with my friend in his Volkswagen during the LA riots, listening to Body Count on the cassette player in his car and getting pulled over by the police.
Was Cop Killer on right when they pulled you over?
I don't think it was on specifically, but it didn't matter because we're like listening to it and maybe it had just been over or whatever. And all of a sudden we see lights and we're like, he's like, you got to turn that off right now. I'm like, okay.
Holy shit. Let's put on Olivia Newton-John.
Yeah. And then they asked us where we were going and we said, we're heading into Hollywood. And he goes, you know where that's where the trouble is. That's where the riots are. And we're like, yeah. And it's like, okay, well, you're not going to be protected by anybody. And we're like, okay, bye.
We'll be
Is,
safe.
and is this when a cop car was mysteriously blown up and you happen to be around?
No,
Tough
that was
Cocktail was involved.
That was years earlier, Greg.
that was earlier.
Yeah.
Not implying.
You know, there is one band that successfully combined rap and hard rock, and that would be Linkin Park. Where, what? Why do you make that face?
Because
Successfully?
you said successfully, and they were
They
a shit
made
band.
a lot of money.
Yes.
So-
and they
So
made the
so did the
and lots of
Teletubbies,
fans.
but that doesn't make the Teletubbies good entertainment.
Yes, so did William Randolph Hearst. He made a lot of money
Yeah.
too.
William Randolph Hearst was in a band.
No,
Yeah.
he was an evil cunt.
He was in a band
He
with the
made a lot of money.
Teletubbies. Linkin Park was not bad. I enjoyed a lot of their stuff. So,
What was your favorite Linkin Park song?
favorite Linkin Park song? You know, I think I go back and forth between "Numb" and probably "In the End" because that's the one that I've done at karaoke a number of times.
In the
Probably
Yeah,
end,
Yeah,
I've never heard those songs, but I bet they're shit.
they're not.
Just kidding.
give me a little bit of a in the end.
I do karaoke for a reason because I can't remember how things go.
In
So-
the end, nothing else matters. No, that's
That's a
Metallica.
different song.
I don't know.
I'd have to do like a whole karaoke thing about it. But you know they've had a very long career up until the time when their lead singer killed himself. You know,
It was a very popular genre. Remember, they called it new metal. And
right, and they're the ones who kind of came out of that with their reputation still basically intact. You know,
I
once
think-
that
I
phase
think
was
if we're
over
gonna-
with.
If we're going to talk about a rock metal or a metal / rap fusion band, the best that ever was is Rage Against the Machine.
Yeah, that's probably they
were more rap than metal though. They were like
I don't
almost
know.
I think you need to go back.
exclusively rap though. They weren't doing anything melodic in their singing.
They're guitars. They're guitars.
No, I mean the guitars is amazing. Tom Morello, I mean, he's a hard to beat.
I'm saying it's metal guitar. And
do you mean because he didn't sing? Like he didn't go, oh?
Yeah, mainly. It's mainly more rap, I think, than actual like melodies coming out of it.
Then we really can't say that Linkin Park is.
Well, no, we can because they would rap in songs and they would sing in songs.
Well, that's bullshit. So there you go.
And they suck.
They sucked.
Why is that bullshit?
Because it sucked. I think the audience is with me. Linkin Park was a piece of shit.
And I mean, the Beastie Boys, of course, obviously they used metal riffs and Run DMC. You know,
they were straight up. They were just sampling. It wasn't like they had a guitar solo in the middle of the rap song.
But later on, the Beastie Boys on that 4th album, they actually had a couple hardcore songs, just straight up old school 80s hardcore. The Heart Attack Guy, that one.
Yeah, Heart Attack Guy is a great song. I remember when I opened for Slayer, going backstage and. In the beginning, and Slayer was already there, and they were just kind of in the green room and hanging out. We were just bringing in our shit and just terrified.
What was the name of your band, Brendan?
Anorexic Youth.
Anorexic Youth. Okay.
Perfect 80s band name.
Didn't you tour with the Weird Lovemakers?
No, never did. Never got out of the Northwest. But anyway, we went in. My point was, we went in, and that's what Slayer was playing like. Mad was playing Beastie Boys. That was one of the first times I really heard anybody else besides myself listen to them.
So they had already gone rap, the Beastie Boys. They weren't listening.
Oh yeah, no, this was late. This was late 80s. We're talking 85.
Okay.
Yeah. License to Ill was already out. I think Paul's Boutique. No, I think it was just License to Ill. Anyway.
Yeah, Beastie Boys were another band where I realized that I could never predict who would be popular in music because I was positive that they were going to be dead after that song, Fight for Your Right to Party, like Madonna should have been dead after Borderline. Or Lucky Star. That was one. Lucky Star was one that made me cringe every time I saw it come on MTV. I'm like,
when you heard the Beastie Boys for the first time, did you say, this is so tired?
I was like,
tired.
I was like, this sucks. I'm like, this is horrible. The weird thing is, like, as years have gone on, it's grown on me, and I like the song. But at the time, I was just like, this just blows.
Well, let's just say that "Fight for Your Right to Party" is the worst Beastie Boys song of all time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of Girls or Brass Monkey, for that matter.
Those are pretty much the same genre. You need to listen to Paul's Boutique.
I may have heard. Was Paul Revere on that one?
Paul's Boutique is the best Beastie Boys album.
No, Paul Revere's on License to Ill, man.
Yeah, License to Ill. You're very
stuck on
solidly
that.
in License.
No, there's a couple of Beastie Boys songs I really like. I really like Sabotage. I like What You Want.
Yeah.
I guess it was that first album. But anyway, my point is basically, I really thought, because of like in the 3 songs that I mentioned, like this band should go nowhere. But obviously that popularized them so they could probably do things that were closer to their nature, I suppose, later on.
Paul's Boutique was a commercial disaster. It was terrible. And the great thing about that is they did more sampling on that than anyone ever had and anyone ever will. Like, that album is illegal to make at this point. They did so much sampling on it.
That was right before the law passed.
That's right before the law passed, yeah.
Which we can thank our last guest for ruining, right? Mark Jacobson.
Oh, yes.
That's right. Brendan wasn't here for the show.
I wasn't here for that guy.
Mark Jacobson was one of the architects of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act.
Oh, well, good thing I wasn't, I guess.
You would have torn into him.
How dare you?
Piece of shit. And you got a shitty website. You know what? Stay with your shitty website.
We actually brought it up, and he said that you're probably right about all of your criticisms. So he might be open for you, like, contacting him to give him a better website. He might. He's got some money. He can afford it. I actually saw a preview for one of his movies on Amazon yesterday, just by accidentally coming across it. I thought it was going to be some rinky-dink thing, but it was like legit, well-acted preview. The Virtuoso with Anthony Hopkins. Anyway, so with white rappers, now obviously in the early days, what we had to go on was Snow and Vanilla Ice prior to the Beastie Boys coming around, and Snow, I think, added a whole new, a whole interesting take on rap, because he was a white guy who actually did have street credibility. I think he released that while he was in jail.
I'm
You guys
not
remember
a big
Snow?
Nope, but I can tell you that Vanilla Ice came after the Beastie Boys.
Yeah.
Was it day after? Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
way after.
Snow did the song Informer, which I'm sure
Nope.
you'd recognize. Oh, you don't recognize that?
That's almost like a dub rap. Like it's got a little Jamaican feel, right?
Yeah, it's Canadian Jamaican.
Oh, that Canadian fucking. Oh, yeah. No, I
That
remember.
guy, right.
Okay.
Chili Rastafarians.
Maybe I can't remember the order in which people came. I know Eminem was later on the chain, and
Eminem is
I think
definitely way later, but
yeah, because he was 90s. But
and Vanilla Ice, and he embarrassed white people enough to not go in a rap for 10 years. People were like, no, we're not
Vanilla
doing it.
Ice was actually early 90s.
Yeah.
so Snow must have been around that time too. I think in early 90s, because
I
it was
love how you're
definitely
hung up on
80s.
Snow. I mean, that is a real he's like a one-hit wonder at best.
He was totally a one-hit wonder. But the reason I'm stuck on it is because Jim Carrey does an impersonation of him that he did on the show Living Color. Sorry, I'm confusing. Where it was pretty hilarious. I think he later did one also of Vanilla Ice. Like all those guys at the time, they didn't really develop careers. Vanilla Ice became just a joke. Snow was kind of a joke as well, but I think it's mainly because he had released the song in prison and then didn't have the time to do another one.
There's a lot of and I know this is not a genre of you guys particularly, but there's a lot of white rappers that are really actually pretty good, and they are very different from their black contemporaries, in that their stuff is much more poetic. They're they're still kind of doing almost 90s rap, like Arrested Development and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You're talking about the band Arrested Development.
I'm talking about the band, not the TV
Okay.
show. Yes.
Okay.
Oh, by the way, my wife was telling me, she goes, I heard a show. It's just some regular guys. There are 3 of them, and they do the show. And I'm like, oh, cool. And she goes, I thought you'd like it. They're really funny, and they're really good. I'm like, oh, yeah. I said, who are these regular guys? She goes, Jason Bateman, I think, is one of them. I'm like, these are not regular guys.
Oh,
Jason
Bateman has a podcast with Will Arnett and one of the
Yes.
guys from Will and Grace.
I've heard it.
Yeah, I heard a little bit of it, and
They're just regular
guys.
guys. Who's Jason Bateman anyway?
Yeah, she didn't know.
No one
But,
knows that guy.
Yeah, then I showed her, and she's like, "Oh, I have seen that guy." I'm like, "Yes," but yeah,
Yeah, he was
no,
in Teen Wolf too, and
yeah. Atmosphere is a really great white rap act.
but
out of
Arrested Development was a black group.
Yes, I'm just saying that branch of rap, which I like.
They were more like a thinking man's rap group. I think.
and so there are still white rappers that kind of carry on in that tradition, because any white rapper trying to be gangster is just just so cringy. So
Talking about like Everlast from House of Pain.
But he did the Irish thing, so he kind of got a little pass, like working class dude, maybe. But beyond that, not much. You're like, fuck it, suck it, shit in the bucket. As a white guy, it's just really not selling.
Yeah.
Is that a new rap song?
Yeah, that's a Chris Rock rap song from CB4. Have you seen the movie CB4?
Oh, I think I
Years
did.
ago.
Yeah, that's literally one of his rap songs. That's the lyric from the rap song.
And in defense of Everlast, the Irish are in the United Kingdom. They're the black people of the United Kingdom. The way they've been treated. So
You think the people from the Isle of Man are treated better?
Yes.
No, they're treated like
the
shit
Irish.
as well. But
The Manx, they're the Manx, Greg.
there's 10 of them, and no one gives a shit.
Yeah.
The people who live on the Isle of Man, they're referred to as Manx. That is their
Does that mean they have
appellation for the people who live there.
that they have a little short tail, not like the regular long tail, like a regular cat?
They're all fuzzy.
Yes. I think all of them are.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they have little penises, little Manx dicks.
They was in England because the English soldiers always scratch them under the chin, and
It's not.
You're
It's
like,
Pat
not
him on the
the.
head.
out.
It's
Yeah.
not the Irish curse. It's the Manx curse. Really.
Right.
The
Well, it's like people
troubles,
from
they call it.
Cornwall are Cornish. People in Ireland, Irish. Scotland, Scottish.
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 Scottilicious. Scottilicious.
But
Haggis is
people from the Isle of Man, for some reason, are called Manx. I don't know why they got that instead of just be called. Maybe they didn't want to call them Manish.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I
Because
guess
if they were
man,
female, that would be like an insult, possibly.
I guess Isle of Man, Man X, kind of like Latin is now they have Latin X. Is that where the cat comes from?
Cat?
From Latin.
The Manx cat. There's a Manx cat. I
Is it
wasn't making.
Manx or Minx?
Oh yeah,
No,
it could be
Manx.
Or
from there
Lynx?
and
You're
there.
talking about the lynx.
No,
No, there's a Manx cat.
there's a
I've heard
Manx
of
cat. It's kind of a domesticated.
Actually, you know
cat,
what? I think that does come from the Isle of Man.
And it's got a short tail, or they cut off its tail because they're assholes over there. I don't know what it is. But
Yes, actually, it is a breed of domestic cat originating on the Isle of Man.
There you go.
See, it all
Problem
ties
solved.
in together.
full circle.
Yes, Manx cats,
So I've got one for you. So
Catwoman.
I'm not wearing it. I wore it yesterday. I have another rapper that I'm into that is Brother Ali, who is on the same record label as Atmosphere. And he is an African American albino Muslim from Minneapolis who raps. So I think he gets the triple crown of
Wow.
different
That's
things. going
African
on.
American albino Muslim. I guess you can get away with it as a Muslim in rapping because you're not supposed to sing, I believe, as part of that belief system. But I
don't
guess
know
you can.
how-
I guess you can rap though.
I don't know how super traditional it is, but he's got some songs where he kind of, he raps about, Allah and the greatness of all that. And then he's got stuff where he's got one, if you really are into it, what's it called? America Goddamn. It's a good one.
That's what everyone says.
Yeah.
America, goddamn. Greg, how much into rap are you?
Not much. I don't like most rap. But the little rap I do like, I like a lot. Like if I hear Public Enemy, their first few albums, it like kicks my ass. Like listening to good punk rock. But most of it I really do not like. And I know I sound like a stupid old man, but I still think the lyric shit, like he was talking about Arrested Development, it still sounds like so much rap as guys bragging about bullshit that I could give two shits about being rich and owning lots of shit. And it's
I'll
just
have to-
ridiculous.
Yeah, you know what, Greg? I think you'd like the rap I listen to. I can't stand the rap that you probably would hear on the radio.
Yeah, gangster rap.
I would
That
call that
shit-
gloat rap is my word for it.
Yeah,
It's like, I'm better than you. I have more money than you. Look at my chains. Look how I killed this guy. Look how
I can
great I
beat you
am.
up.
Look at my street credibility. All right, good.
You're
good
a
news.
bitch. You know.
Right. Women are whores. Like, yeah, I don't. It's not my scene. I prefer things that are a little bit more intellectual. And there are some rappers out there who are really smart. I don't know their names, but I've heard them.
Yeah, Aesop Rocks is really good. He's another white rapper that does kind of more intellectual, kind of almost like spoken word poetry kind of rap.
So it's like Henry Rollins.
Yeah, I guess without so much angsty anger about everything.
And of course, a lot of rap to me is like, if I like the sample a lot, I'll say, yeah, I like this song. It's the rap has to be pretty good and entertaining, but yeah, I like a lot of rap songs because they sampled a great song here.
So what has
I like
occurred,
it.
I think, in culture, though, is that rap has become so pervasive that it's taken over pop music, right? So
Yeah,
now, like
for
most,
sure.
like a huge percentage of songs out there are basically rap songs. I never expected to see that kind of a sea change occur within American culture. It really, and I'm curious. I'm curious. I haven't really looked into it, but how did that occur? Like, why did that occur? Why did that become the thing that
People
became
like it more.
popular music?
It happened in the 50s. Rock and roll kind of took over. And almost all the top 40 was semi-rock, some kind of rock, flavor of rock. So it happens. A musical form sweeps everything else aside.
Yeah.
And then
I think it has for whatever reason I don't understand, but I think it has sort of a broad cross-cultural acceptance or interest or whatever. Like I think a lot of other music genres have gotten pigeonholed. Like my kids, I feel, are pretty musically diverse. You know, they like the Black Keys. You know, they like Rage Against the Machine. They like.
So Black Keys, wouldn't that be cultural appropriation because they took the term black for their name of their band?
I'm just gonna keep
color.
I'm just gonna keep going.
Okay.
So they like all kinds of different music, but they also really like rap. Like even rap, I don't even really like some of the more, you know, gangster kind of stuff.
Or like Lil Wayne.
I don't know about Lil Wayne, little somebody, little nauseous,
little nauseous, little pit in my stomach.
Yeah.
Little wart on my hand.
But you know, part of it was that genre kind of boomed when they were kids, and so they have a certain. It's kind of like the guest said, you know, it's not about albums and it's not even about genres anymore. It's about songs, you know. So like that one song from Lil Stank is really good, and I don't care about the rest of it. Yeah, I don't know about the rest of his shit, but you know, Lil Stank's song about going to the grocery store is awesome. You know,
kind of like when like 45s were popular, when they were just those were the things that get put out were the 45s instead of.
Right. What about Little Stinker? Is he a rapper?
Wasn't that like Bugs Bunny?
Yeah,
is that your reference there, Greg?
It's an oldies saying. People would say he's a little stinker. That guy, you know.
Yeah, but wasn't that a saying from Bugs Bunny?
That's probably where I heard it first. Yes,
could be.
All
like, ain't I a little stinker?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I still want you to try an Indian Scottish accent, though.
I'd probably offend two different classes of people. So I'd have to say two stereotypes of both of them. Like, so like, what would Groundskeeper Willie say mixed with what Apu would say?
Housekeeper Willie?
Oh, I'm sorry. Simpsons reference. I forget.
Oh,
Simpsons.
Got it.
Yeah.
Is Matt not a Simpsons guy or something?
Yes.
No.
He's the only guy I know who doesn't get Simpsons reference.
I think I've seen one episode, maybe.
I'm not a huge Simpsons guy, but I mean, I got the reference. I mean,
it's
I'm
part
not
of our
Oh, I knew the Apu one. I just didn't know Housekeeper Willie.
Yeah, that's Scottish.
Groundskeeper.
Oh,
I thought you said housekeeper.
No, he works at the school. He's like the janitor guy.
I have no idea.
And he's a Scottish stereotype through and through.
That show has been on for like 30 seasons, and I've seen one episode. But, you know, it's just because I don't really watch cartoons, so that's why I never got into it. I don't really watch. I tried watching, what the hell was that cartoon called? American Dad? Or, no, not that one.
That's a bad one.
That's not that
good. The one with the kid with the big head.
Family Guy.
That one. I tried that one. I gave it like a half a season. And then I finally gave up. I'm like, I can't watch cartoons. I can't. I'm like, I just am not enjoying this, you know.
Is it
try to give The Simpsons at least the first 10 seasons? Well, not the first one.
Give it the first 10 seasons.
Second through 10 is all gold. Second through 10 season, every minute.
I'm going to tell you right now, Family Guy is 50 times better than any of The Simpsons.
Really? Yeah. I'll look into it.
No, the Family Guy. Season. They do the whole like the side jokes, and it's a little more grown up and it's a little more dirty, and then they'll like break into musical numbers which are fucking hilarious. Now the talent and the writing in that are way better. The Simpsons get credit because they were the first, for the most part.
I thought Family Guy was just a ripoff of The Simpsons. I watched the first year.
It kind of was.
Well, you know, they're all ripoffs of Bugs Bunny, aren't they, Greg?
But wait a minute now, Matt, like on the cartoon thing, so no Rick and Morty?
Never seen it now.
Oh my God.
I
just never got into cartoons as an adult. You know, the weird thing is when I was young, when I was a kid, I'm like, I will always watch cartoons. I will take cartoons to my grave.
Who gives a shit? I mean,
somewhere along the line, they weren't appealing to me.
It's a weird thing. It's like they're like, close your eyes and they could be real people, but somehow because they're little two-dimensional drawings, it's a big turnoff. Like,
I think I'm more attracted to a visual medium. Yeah. So
You watch all those
if I'm not
Marvel-
really if I'm not really digging the art of it, then I'm not going to really get into it. And I think it's probably a large part of it is that the two-dimensional
Here's what you need to do.
drawings are just not that cool for me.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I can see some things are funny. Like I said, I watched, I think, about a half a season of Family Guy, and there were things that were funny, but it wasn't something where I wanted to come back to.
Was there 2 laughs an episode for you on Family
I
Guy?
think there was probably more than 2, but I don't know. I guess I just would rather watch Real Housewives.
Are we still recording?
That
Yes,
sounds
we
like
are.
That sounds like, again, the fact that you're like, I'll watch Real Housewives, but Rick and Morty or Family Guy? Are you kidding me?
The Real Housewives again
I
for
don't
me is
think-
like
I
a
don't think
National
that's-
Geographic special.
But that's not
I don't
visually
think that's a
appealing.
matter of visual art form as much as it is personal taste.
Yeah.
Well, for me, it's again, I consider it like my National Geographic specials. I look at it as the mating habits of the the delusional.
Wow. Well,
That's
that's
what I look at it. So for me, it's
that's
studies,
not
it's
that's not
studies in human
condescending
beings.
at all. Jesus
Who
Christ.
said that I wasn't condescending? I never
No,
took
not
that
me.
claim.
I'm just saying.
I never claimed that as a halo for myself.
I'm-
I have no condescension within me. I am.
You always
totally
say
a-
that I'm
I'm
you
always a
say
nice
that-
person.
You always say
Oh.
that I'm elitist. That sounded like the most elitist thing I've ever heard.
What is elitist? What are you talking about?
I
Looking at these
watch.
people as lesser than, like you're some. Oh, they're
Yeah, I
animals.
watch these fucked up people like I watch monkeys mating in the savannah. Is a little elitist, you gotta admit. It's really beyond condescension.
I think I can be that way because I don't work at those levels of society. So that's how I give myself the pass on that condescension.
Because you're not a housewife from New Jersey.
Because I don't have like a ton of money and I'm working in these circles that those people work in of like I don't know.
So you're punching up, as they say.
Exactly. I'm working against the grain is what I'm doing. I want to be those people so that I could then look down on everyone else like they do. So
The
instead
things
I have
that come
to.
out of your mouth.
What are you trying to say, Greg?
nothing. No.
It's always interesting. I'll give you that.
What
It's never
what
boring.
made that interesting to you?
We just went over it.
You
I
didn't
think
tell
it's-
me
I
which
think-
the interesting part was.
I think we've covered it actually. I
Yeah.
think it's time to move on. Back to
I didn't find
rappers.
it interesting. So we've
Well,
we've
Well,
dealt
that's
with the
because
white rappers
maybe,
so much.
maybe if Greg and I started yelling at each other and calling ourselves ethnic slurs, and then I threw a bottle against a wall, maybe that would be more entertaining if we had started just manifesting more white trash. I think
don't
we do a
know.
pretty good job at
I
it.
think it would
Yeah.
be entertaining to some people. Sure, if a little bit of violence goes a long way for viewership.
Hey, I've done my part. I don't see either one of you doing your part. I took the hit.
Which
I
hit?
took the hit
Which hit?
on the show.
What hit did you take?
Literally.
Oh, right, the literal
Yeah.
hit. Got it.
You're like
Yeah.
talking about violence. I'm the only one who's
That's true.
actually given the show violence.
Yeah, I don't have anybody who. Well, I guess my wife does eavesdrop on me a bit sometimes. She's not doing it today because the air conditioning is out, and so she's up and upstairs where we have the portable air conditioning running. But yeah. So yeah, I don't know. She's never come in to whack me for any reason.
I have the window open a crack, and the place across the way is like 10 feet away. So they could be eavesdropping on me. And that would be amazing if one of my neighbors just walked to my door and smacked me in the head because they didn't like what I was saying. That would be a great episode.
Maybe
know
we
what,
could,
Greg?
we could plan
think
that.
I think you should set that up.
Actually, if
Stage
you
it.
get Jen to come by, since she has shown up on the podcast
She
before,
was, yeah.
she was here earlier at your place.
No, I'm
today.
saying that one time. Yeah.
Yeah, she would gladly hit you in the head because she certainly
Yeah.
hit me a number of times.
She's wanted to
So-
hit me many times, but she's a
She's
stranger.
kind of violent sometimes. So yeah, it's like at times I've said to her, "I'm like, why are you hitting me?" I'm like, "What have I done? Why are you hitting me, person?" Anyway, all right. So before we close off this particular client, is there any final statements regarding Black Rockers? I mean, I would like to see a lot more I would like them to come back and revisit this at their next conference and go, you know what?
Yes.
We want to take rock and roll back.
Yeah, they should.
Get their committees together and make that. So please, Committee for Black Rock Music, please get back together and say we want to bring this back and take back our art form.
Well, I'm going to start a nonprofit encouraging more young Black youths to get into rock and roll. It's like kind of like a school of rock.
Well, if you're not familiar with Gary Clark Jr., I brought him up earlier, and Jon Butcher was familiar with him. But if you're not familiar with him, check him out. He's like a really amazing young guitarist, young African-American guy. Well, I guess, to us, he's young. I think he's in his 30s now. Does his own cover of Come Together, which is phenomenal. And you should look into him, Greg.
There's not
a lot of
I'm
others,
Yeah, I'm not denying there's always some Black rocker somewhere, but just not so few.
Yeah, but not on like large quantities. There's like one band that I know. It's like a death metal band has a what's the name of the band? I think it's Avenged Sevenfold, and they're maybe not death metal, but they're like a hard heavy metal band. They have a Black lead singer, who does type of music.
Avenged Sevenfold is death metal.
Yeah, I don't think they're quite death metal. I think they're just more of a heavy metal band.
Well, if they do the barking dog voice, they're
but they do that thing as part of it. Yeah. Who let the devil out? Who? That's where it goes. Anyway, so as a reminder to everyone, we are doing our anniversary show on June 23rd. It's going to be live on YouTube for 2 hours. So there'll be some form of interaction if I can figure it out, if you want to send us comments, or it could just be a total screw up where nobody else shows up and interacts with us, which would be fun with us too, because we're obviously, enamored with the sounds of our own voices, which is why we do this podcast. So don't forget though, that it's June 23rd. It will be a Wednesday. We'll try to have a host of guests showing up. I don't know who will. We have not gotten any RSVPs yet, but we do have people who said that they're interested and they'll try to make it. So we'll see how that turns out. But I do want to thank our guest from earlier, which was Jon Butcher, notably of the Jon Butcher Access, and you can find more about him on jonbutcher.com. Greg or Brendan, do you have anything special that you want to add to the end of this particular episode?
Worst show ever.
Worst?
I'm ashamed of us.
It's like every show is the worst show. It's like we
keep lowering the bar.
Everyone gets worse and worse as we go along.
I'll be in New York the week after next.
Oh yeah, right. So if anybody wants to hook up with Brendan, try not to. He'll be busy.
His phone number will be on the website.
I've already gotten texts from your sister, Greg.
Excellent.
Oh gosh. Oh no.
I told her not to send you annoying memes and shit.
No,
delete your mailbox.
That could happen. Well, she hasn't been doing that much recently, though. Oh, as a reminder, also for the anniversary show, we have a lot of surprises going to be happening. We're going to have a new intro, a new outro to the show. We're going to have new artwork, a new logo, probably by then. What else? We'll have merchandise at that stage.
You keep forgetting the main reason. You keep forgetting the main event. It's the first annual Quibblies Award.
Well, Quibblies, I mean, okay, so I guess we can announce that. So we're going to be giving awards to all of the guests that have been on the show.
That appear.
In some form or another. We can give it to me if they don't show up. We'll just make that easy, because it'll just be done via electronic means anyway. So it shouldn't be, I mean, of course, I don't know what this award is going to be, but it'll be something, and they'll get it, whatever it is.
It'll be fungible.
Their name and lights. Yeah, it'll be completely fungible. No non-fungible trading going on here. Fully fungible, and other F words that you
That's
can
my
add to
new
that.
rap name. I'm Little Fungi.
That'd be fungi.
No, fungi.
Yeah, but if you spell it.
But it's fun. PHUN with a big G.
Just
Fun
the letter
G.
G.
Yeah,
so it'd be
just
like
the letter G.
PHUN-G.
No hyphen. Just slapped up uppercase G.
So then it would just be fung.
Fungi. No.
They wouldn't know to pronounce the G that way.
And we'll put a colon in there. Because we'll put a colon in there.
Oh, that'd be different.
Because
no
everybody
one
needs
uses
a colon.
Nobody uses a colon.
Semicolon. That would be
No, they don't use semicolons or rap names either, Greg.
No, you got to go full colon.
Got it. If
There
you're
was
gonna
never
go,
like Jimi Hendrix semicolon experience. Nobody ever did that in rock.
no.
in
So
music.
Brendan will be breaking
Yeah.
new ground. He
Full
will be
co-
our own visionary.
And then one more thing, the name of the award might change in the next few weeks. We're spitballing here, but
Well,
it
no,
will
I think we voted. Quibbly is what it's called.
but even if it's not, it will be very prestigious. Let me just say, no
But
matter what it's called,
we'll have to come up with our own academy that is
it'll be
supporting
quite an
the
honor to
Quibbly.
get one. Those who receive it will be very proud of themselves, and they should.
Yes, because no one else will have them. It'll be very much exclusive.
Yes. And fungible.
And fungible. On that note, I want to thank everybody for listening to the Law Offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker. Bye.
You've left the offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker. It's over. It's over. It's time for you to go home. It's over. It's over. Go away now.